Okay, I came up with a handout to just kind of go through a frequency distribution. So on this one, notice I've already actually, given you the answer right down here. So I don't want you to just look at the answer, but the idea here is it looks like we've got an examination. There's 20 students, and of course this is just random order. And look at the instructions, say they want you to do a frequency distribution. Notice I'm actually already giving you the class, start with 50 to 59 and so forth. In fact, by the way, don't worry about drawing a histogram on this one. I just want to walk you through just the distribution aspect of it. But I'm also wanting a cumulative frequency, a relative frequency, and then a cumulative relative frequency distribution. So, if you go through what they had showed you in the textbook about, okay, how many classes should you come up with? And, obviously it's the rule is you go 2 to the k, right? And you want to be just more than this number right here. So if you just started to do trial and error, if I didn't give you this, for example, you'd go 2 to the 2, and obviously that's 4, 2 to the 5, 2 to the 6, and so forth. And what you'd find is that when you went, for example, let's say you went 2 to the 4, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that's 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 you'd get, what, 16. When you go 2 to the 5 and you multiply that by another 2, that's going to get you to what, 32, and that would be the number that would take you past 20. So hence, this is where you're going to actually have 5 different classes. Okay? Now, if you can get that, if you count down here, because this is the actual answer, this is what they use. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's going to be how they came up with the 5 classes. Okay? So that technique would have worked for this one. Okay, and then the other thing is to get the width of the class, I already gave you it's 50 to 59, but the basic rule is you look for what's the largest number, which in this case it looks like I see a 99 as the largest number. And then the smallest number, if you kind of scan these, that's 52 is a small one. Looks like 52 is the smallest. Okay, so if you take the max minus the minimum number, and simply divide by the number of classes, that's going to give you the actual interval width. So in this case, if you took, 99 minus 52, and then divide that by 5, that's going to give you a relative answer in terms of what you want the interval width to be. So 99 minus 52, and then if you divide that by 5, you get about 9.4. So I'm going to write that over here. So 9.4. So basically, I would say round that to an interval length of 10, which is basically what that is. So if you got to use 50 as the first number. So if you count 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, you'll notice that that's how they came up with their interval length. So don't stress that too much, but I've already given this to you in terms of the starting point, but that's the basic idea of how they would have come up with it. And then down here below, here's your frequency count. You just have to count how many items up here are between 50 and 59, and hopefully you can go back and redo this. You should find out that there's 3. And then you go 60 to 69, you'd find out that there's 2 and so forth. And so basically at that point, it's just a counting game. And then of course, if you add these up, you should get your 20. Okay, now, once you get your frequency count, I'm going to kind of skip over just to make sure you understand how to get the relative frequency. What you basically do is you take each of these individual frequency counts and you simply divide by 20. So if I were to take 3 and divide that by 20, that's going to give me 0.15. If I were to take 2 and divide that by 20, that's going to give me 0.10 and so forth. So basically, you take each of these and divide by 20. That's going to give you your relative frequency. Okay, now for the cumulative frequency, I want you to think of this as label it like the first column is going to be less than or equal to 59, and then you've got less than or equal to 69. It's always going to be less than or equal to that upper limit, and so forth. So like, for example, we would start on this first one, it's going to be 3. Notice the first category is going to be the same. And then when I go to the next category, what you basically do is you basically keep adding the next layer. So you take 3 plus 2, and you would get 5, which is basically everything that's less than or equal to 69. So 69 down to 50. okay? And then as you keep going, you just basically add the next layer. So you go 3 plus 2 is 5, plus another 5, that's going to get you to 10. That's where they basically got that number, okay? And then as you keep going, you keep adding the next layer, you'd get 14, and then 14 plus 6 at the last layer would get you to 20. So the cumulative is by like taking each layer and just adding it on to the next layer, okay? Now, the last one would be to take this cumulative frequency and convert it into the relative, and it's the same idea as the relative, except you're using these numbers. You still divide by 20, so you take 3 divided by 20 and you'd get 0.15. You'd take 5 divided by 20 and you'd get 0.25 and so forth. Notice when you get to the very last category, that is simply 20 divided by 20 or 1. So basically this is the basic idea of what you should be able to get out of chapter 2. We're going to be doing more of this in the upcoming chapters when we get into how they come up with various probabilities. But this is just to kind of get you into the idea of how do you set up frequency distributions.